Coming home this weekend before going back out abroad in the United States of America. We welcome you to Indianapolis Motor Speedway for tonight's running of the Brickyard 600 miles. And yes, the pre-race ceremonies are already over, same as back home again in Indiana. We are going to see some great racing here this weekend. Next week, we are going to Watkins Glen, and then we're going out to Monza/Italy. It's gonna be a good one. Let's meet the starting lineup. In row 1, it's Isaac Stead, Nolan Vernango, and Nate Rao. Row 2, it's Riley Poindexter, Allie Brossman, Jordan Spencer. Row 3, Penn Pearson, Luke Clark, and I think Luke Clark. Hang on. Yeah, Luke Clark and one more. Row 4, it's the 65 Landon Gillett, then Eli Jackson, and the second quickest car on the racetrack in practice, Matthew Campton. In row 5, we have Michaela Winstead, Grady Broughton, and Boston Matthews. And rounding out the field, it's Braden Mills, Bryce Pax, Jonathan Stevenson, Austin Horner, Maya Dimmick, Pace Bridge. Then we get to Cole Flick, Luke Dockery, Abjar calling the fastest car in practice. Then we get to Grant Irwin, Rodrigo Patino Romo, Kellen Sheff, Audrey Schreiner, Nick Green, David Loudon, and Heidi Miner. 240 laps. Who will finish here this race? We are likely going to not see many people finish because that's what we get for racing on ovals. Oval races are usually wild. And here we go. They race at Texas in the beginning of the year. 13 cars, I think, finished. Last week, it was Campton winning. And now, here we go. It's a 3-wide start. The crowd is on their feet. Sold out crowd once again at Indianapolis. No empty seats in the stands. They're all on their feet, racing under the lights, and we are green in the Brickyard 600. There we go. The chaos back in the field. Here we go. Look at this. The 42 contact. And they all save it through turn 1 and 2. No, they don't. There's a big crash. And there is a big one here in Indy. Big one in Brickyard 600. Campton is involved but gets out of it. Nick Green is involved. All 31 cars remain on the track, but the big one in Indianapolis at the entrance of the back straightaway. It is going to be interesting to see what caused that wreck. Chaos in Indy. Riley Poindexter was running up front as well. Huge crash on the back straightaway. As your leader is Penn Pearson. Pearson leads over Vernango, Rao, instead. That's pretty much amazing that Ben Pearson has the lead early in this one. Lap 1 crash here on the Brickyard. They cross the yard of bricks. And we are still racing in Indy. Look at Nate Rao. He will take second one. Rao to second over the 12. Here comes a 17. I'm shocked that all 31 cars are still in this race after that big one. Like, that was like almost half the field. Almost half the field was caught up in that wreck. Battle for third. Here comes Stead to the inside. Stead and Vernango, contact made. Vernango almost goes around out for 4. Here comes Horner now, going to make it 3 wide. Austin Horner, top 10. Actually, top 5 for the former CSKL champion. Stead will take third. But it's Ben Pearson and Nate Rao, 1 and 2. Pearson trying to win here in Indy. Go. Here comes a 32. That is a lap car. Around the outside, but he gets hit. 32 of Campton gets hit. Campton, he won at IRP like this past Thursday night over Delilah Shipley and of course Nick Green in the 71. That was a good battle between the 53 and the 51R. And now back up front, we have the 17 leading. Once again, look at the lap car of Campton now, going back low. Go back inside to the top. Contact made with a 17, he goes around. Campton goes around again. Hampton was one of the fast cars in practice. He's stopped on the racetrack there just a bit, trying to get going, but he has heavy damage to that 32. Heavy damage to the vehicle of Matthew Campton after getting hit, after spinning out on lap 3. Now, just like that, we have a battle for second. It's Mills and Stead. Battle for second and Pearson, as Pearson has a good lead. And now here comes Mills instead, closing back in on the leader. Renango pits, look at Gilliott. Gilliott's there. Horner and Pax there as well. Some others back up front. It's Pearson who has the lead. Past turn 2 here at the Brickyard on lap 7 of 240. They are racing 240 laps in this one. 600 miles of chaos. Who will be the king or queen of chaos here tonight at the Brickyard? It's a full moon, so of course chaos has started. Here comes the 17 across the yard of bricks, leads on slide number 8. Isaac Stead now trying to close in on your leader. That 9 was fast in qualifying, and he was good in practice as well. You can see they are using the brakes. Look at Gillett, he's up to 3rd. So a 4/10 of a second lead over the 9, as the 9 is going to go up and block the 65. The 1 battling for 4th. Here comes Horner in a side-by-side battle for the lead. It was side by side. Stead tried to take the lead, but Pearson keeps the lead. Here comes the 9 once again to the top, looking for a good run on the 17. Now the 9 there. In the draft of this is the 65. He's going to use the draft to the inside. He's going to get a slingshot around the 9. And now to the 17. Contact made. Look at Horner to third. He won second. That one has won so many races here with Ava Shipman. She is a former winner here in the Brickyard. She won the Season 2 race here. Here we go. Battle for second. And it's Horner that will take that spot. And he is going for the lead. Blue cars, the 1 and the 9, have speed here tonight. Here under the lights at the Brickyard. And now here comes the 65 back down low beneath the 1 and is going for the lead. So he goes high, barely any contact, and here comes the 3. Mills to third. Braden Mills, he also has a ton of speed. He won second. Mills now going out to Gillett for second. It's side by side. They make contact. Mills goes up, takes second, and is there on the rear end of Pearson. Here he comes down turn 2. Mills down the back straightaway. Still behind. Then Pearson. Can Braden Mills win Brickyard 600? He won Sonoma. Braden Mills to the lead in Indianapolis. This is a home race for everybody here in the Crazy Sports Kid League. They're all trying to win at their home track. It's the 3, the 17, and the 65. 1, 2, 3. Horner in 4th is closing in on that 65. You can see the sun is kind of setting over a beautiful race, over the beautiful Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The track does work quite often. Here comes 65 to the inside. He takes second, and here comes Stead now battling Pearson. Stead has taken the 4th away. It's going for 3rd. Goes high, kind of flips along just a bit, goes down low. I think he's going to be there on turn 1. Yes, he is. But he is in the grass. Stead's in the grass, losing spots. Here comes Gillian. Contact made. Battle for the lead. Something happened off the 4. 2 cars on the race. Gillett to the lead. Something happened off turn 4. Two cars out of the race. Looks like it's a 63. That's one of the cars that's out. Looks like that the 29th place car is Matthew Campton, so he's still in the race, but way behind. It's lap 14 of 240. 240 laps in Indianapolis. Multiple breaks and multiple times at where I will be back broadcasting. Here comes the 17 to the inside of the 63. They're staying side by side to turn 4. keeps it off the wall. And here they come. Here comes the 65. He goes to the lead. Just barely, but the 3 still at the top. Mills keeping pace around the top, but loses the lead to the 65. Mills now, time to regroup and use the draft. He goes low now. He's going to be there on turn 3. Look at the 9. Where's at the 1? I don't know. The 3 is back up front. That's the 1 in 4th. 65 contact made. Now the 1 is going for 3rd on Pearson. Lap 16 is on the board here at the Brickyard. Racing under the lights in this one. Here comes the 65. Out of 2. Continuing to run in 2nd. Looks like that he's not going to battle for the lead. Pearson will. Finn Pearson. He will take 2nd. Horner looking for 3rd. Horner cannot take 3rd. Here comes the 17. Great run. Look at the 1. Horner. He will take 3rd away from Gilliam. And now he's going to take 2nd away from Pearson. What a run by Austin Horner. Horner's speed has gained ground. He wants the lead. To the inside, it's side by side, they make contact. They continue to run side by side to turn 3. Horner cannot pass for the lead. Mills continues to lead. Now here comes Horner. Through turn, down back straightaway. Down the front straightaway comes to turn 1. Horner down on the inside. Mills on the outside. Side by side still. Mills loves that outside line. And they continue to battle. That's going to bring the 17 into the mix. And the 1 trying to outbreak the 3 here. Into turn 3. He takes the lead and is going to clear. Horner to the lead over Mills. He finally took the lead. Looks like tar in the wall back there. Looks like that the 11 hit the wall. It's back going. 3 and 1 still battling. Mills back up front. Braden Mills back up front here in Indianapolis. And here comes the 17. The draft is real. He's going to go, and he's going to clear by the 1. He's going to go by the 3. Looking for the lead once again. But side by side. They make contact. Mills into the wall. Mills saves it. We have a crash. Which one's he? 29 is there. And they're at 77. Rainey gets past it. It's a short wreck. .77 and 29 get it back going. Is that Stevenson in the mix? Look at the battle. 3 and 17 still making contact. Through turn 4. 17 does not go up into the wall. He wants the lead. Look at the 65. He wants to make it 3 wide. Still side by side for the lead. Mills is not losing the lead. He loves the outside line. Mills on the outside line works. Has major contact behind them. The 65 and a 1 both made contact. The 17 is not close enough to take the lead. Here we go. Lap 21 is on the board. Into lap 22. Lap 22 is on the board. And it's like I said, we have great racing once again at the Brickyard. Let's see the fuel situation for each driver. The one has to pit soon. He has 5 laps left on his fuel. Still contact in front of him as the leaders go into 3. They continue to make contact. The 5 comes down pit road. The 1 comes down pit road. The first pit stop up front for fuel. So that's really good. Here comes the 17. Looking for the lead, but he can't take it away. Mills continues to lead at the Brickyard. He runs that middle to top line on the corners while side by side, and he gains momentum. But when he has a lead, he just keeps the momentum. He keeps the lead, not running side by side. Here comes the 65. He won second. Takes second away. And here comes Gillett. It's a race of momentum every time we get here to Indy. When they have momentum up front, they use that momentum to get up front. Here comes the 65 once again, using the draft and hit all his momentum now. The 3 has momentum, and he is fast. Side by side, the 65 slingshots around the 3. Here comes the 17 and 18. They continue battling. Out of 4. Now it's the 3's turn to use his momentum, and he's going to have momentum entering turn 1. Lap 25 is on the board. Gillett leads that line. But here comes Mills, sends it in deep turn 1, and Reed takes the lead. And it's like I said, whenever he gets momentum, he is quick. He is one of the fastest cars on the racetrack, and he is running up front like it. He's running like a champion right now. He is a champion in this league, trying to win at his home track, trying to claim the victory at the Yard of Bricks. Lap 26, 240 is on the board. They're racing aggressively right now. They need to remind themselves, hey, we still have over 200 laps to go. Yeah, over 200 laps to go in this one. And we know that when it comes down to it, we will see chaos. Mills and others come down pit road. He brings a whole bunch of cars down pit road. Half the front runners pit. And while that's happening, let's tag along with Matthew Campton. He has a visor cam, and we will be back after the break. Well, we saw another wreck with the 32. Back up front's Luke Dockery, looking to win at the Brickyard. I do need to see something though. If I remember correctly, I don't know if I am correct or not, I might be just losing my mind. I think Dockery won this race last year. I'll be right back. I was indeed losing my mind. My endemic won this race last year in the 22. Last year it was a day race, the Plankford Quakers 100, and now 600 miles. Dockery, Mills, instead 1, 2, 3. In the recent years, we have usually seen some pit stops near the end of the race to cause chaos. And here comes the knock. He takes second away. Isaac said he will take second away, looking for career win number 1. Will it happen tonight at the Brickyard? It's the 11 who leads. Here comes Renango. It's the 65 on pit road as we have a left tire deep on the inside wall of the front straightaway. It's Luke Dockery who has the lead here at IMS. At 51, we are about 10 laps away from having 200 laps to go. We are likely going to have a great finish to this one. And here we go, folks. The 11 is there. The 12 left car around the top, looking for a lap back, is not going to get a lap back, and the 9 is going to look underneath the 12, trying to get momentum into turn 3, but he's not going to be able to, as a 12 contact. Renango crashes into turn 3. And looks like it's a single car spin. Nick Green is there. Look at the crash. Exiting 4. Campton is involved. Maya Dimmick, last year's winner, and this racetrack is out of the race. She was upside down. And it's the 3 who has the lead. Looks like that the 11, and oh my goodness gracious. That caused some chaos up front. I'm telling you that right now. That caused chaos up front. The 3 was the only one to get out of it cleanly. As there's some more drivers there. More drivers are piling in. Looks like that the 2 Cole Flick has once again made his name known up front. He is in second. Could Cole Flick get the win? The 2 now pits. As we still see some, as we are still seeing some good races. I mean, some good battling. The 3 continues to lead even on pit road. The 65 is there now. And he will take the lead away. The 65 up front, and the 11 is there right behind him. Great racing from Indianapolis. The 9 is in third. Here comes the 11. Contact made. Dockery there. He takes the lead back away here at the Brickyard. Looking to win here this evening. We usually see big wrecks of plenty here. And here we go. It's the 11 lead. How about Luke Docker, guys? He might be one of the drivers to watch for later in this race. But remember, we have 260 laps in this one. And we know that the sun will continue to set on Indy here tonight. We will finish under the lights. No light from the sky will be seen. Maybe just a bit dim. Who knows? As we are going into another break, let's ride along with Isaac Stead. He has a roof cam. Lap 105. Green pits. He was leading this race. Yes, you just heard me correct. Nick Green was actually leading this race. That's rare. As Case Bridge comes round, and he is going to take the lead away. If he hadn't gotten penalized last week, he would have won. How about some new front runners? Yeah, how about some new front runners? With good drivers up front. It's Bridge up there. Side-by-side battle. It's Trainer, Audrey Trainer, and Eli Jackson. Heidi Minor in position as well. Look at that 9 and the 3. The 65 is up there. The 51 is in position as well. But right now it's Case Bridge who leads at the Brickyard. Case Bridge looking to win here tonight. Bridge looking to win. Will he be able to do it? That's my question. I don't know if he will be able to. But he has a good chance to do so. Case Bridge continuing to lead. Is he going to be able to win? Here we go, folks. Here's the 16. Still leading. Bridge. His gap has closed into a 1 second lead. Here comes Eli Jackson. Still looking for career win number 1. The 38 right behind the 16. Case Bridge looking to win. He crosses the yard of bricks again. Lap 109 is on board. We have over 160 to go. - 109 laps in. 600 miles in this race. We are already past a few miles already. Here we go. We got Heidi Minor in the mix. Can Heidi Minor pick up her first career win? She has a chance to do so. Eli Jackson up there with more feel than the leader. That's shocking. Jackson now looking to close in on the leader. It's a good run. How about the battle behind him? The battle for 5th is on. It's the 9 right at the top, passing the 3. It's still evening here at the Brickyard. The lights are still on. The 3 and 9 make contact. They are still behind the 16 who leads. Schreiner, that's not a lap car. The 45 isn't, but the 18 is. Trying to get around the 18 as the 18 is trying to push the 38 now. Back up front. The lap car helping the 38. It's a good run by Jackson. He has to go on the brakes. 24 cars remaining here at the Brickyard. Matthew Campton is still in the field. Nick Green is inside the top 10. How about Nick Green in the top 10? That's huge. That 51 is quick. And how about the 38? Eli Jackson to the leader, lap 112. The 9 is closing in on the leaders as well. Do not count out Isaac Stead. Stead has been quick all night long, all evening long. Still almost done with this race. No, but we were not almost done with it. We still have a long way to go until the checkered flag. 9 and 18 side by side. 9 around the top, gets a good run on the 70. Bridge loses another position. Continues to lose spots. The 18 is going to stay behind the 9. 9 is having a good run on the 70. The 16 and 45 side by side. 3 on the inside, looking to pass the 18. That's a lap car. The 18 is a lap car. And 3 is beside the 9. And then battle is on and up front. Stead running right there. Here comes Mills. Underneath Heidi Miner. Miner and Mills side by side. Good run. How about Green looking for one of his laps back. He is in 8th. Not good. Got a bad run for Nick Green. He's 1 lap down, searching for his lap back. But can he catch the leader? That is the question. He's there in 8th. Let's get around Isaac Stead. Nick Green came on late in the RMG Racing 51. He usually has speed here. Nick Green does. For RMG Racing. And I'm not shocked that he's up front. Top 10 run for Thunder. Out of 4 though, it's Eli Jackson continuing to lead at the Brickyard. Let's see what Braden Mills can do. Looks like Michaela Winsett is right there trying to come out of the pit road as well. She's going to come out of the pit road at. Still behind all of these cars, I think. Mills still in a battle, I think, with the 70. Yeah, here comes Miner. 24 gets in front of him. The 9. Isaac Stead. And maybe the end to a great day. Sideways spins, I think, off of the 65, but a good save there. Heidi Miner now closing back in. The 16 is there. Here comes Bridge. It's side by side. Round goes Michaela Winstead. That is a lap car. She was around the top of the 70. The 3 has damage. Now the 70 tries to close back in. Here comes Audrey Schreiner looking for the win. Schreiner is there. She is quick. The 45 behind the 38. Heidi Miner looking for career win number 1. Case Bridge as well. And Eli Jackson. Bridge underneath Schreiner. Gets around her. Bridge rookie Schreiner, a veteran in this league. She has multiple wins. She slides out of 2. And here comes a 70 and a 3. Watching Heidi Miner now. She's under pressure from Braden Mills through turn 3. Mills now trying to get a good run on the 70, but he can't. Miner continues a good run. And now trying to get back around the 65. Maybe get up there and get a lap back. Here we go. 51 gets around the 18 and 65. The 3 gets around the 70. Here comes a 51 as well. Here comes a 70. Heidi Miner down on the inside. She's going to bound the 45 as 45 loose again. Green gets around Mills. Heidi Miner to 3rd. But it's Eli Jackson who leads. Out of 4 comes lap 119. 260 laps in this one. Lap 119 and 260s on the board. And it's a whole different group up front, except Braden Mills. He's been up front all night long. All evening long. To be exact. Here comes a 38. And now for turn 4. Good run by Eli Jackson. Through turn 3. Here comes Braden Mills. Him and Heidi Miner side by side for position. Mills takes 3rd, and he is going for 2nd on Case Bridge. Miner now wants that 3rd spot. Look at Bridge on the inside, can't make anything happen. Miner and Mills side by side. They battle. Miner clears the 3. Schreiner now still in front of the 65. Great racing indeed. Here comes the 16 and the 70 there. Great run around the inside by Case Bridge. He uses the inside to his advantage, and he's going to get momentum down turn 1 on lap 121. Bridge inside, Jackson outside. If the draft was a good thing here, that would allow the 70 to close in, and she is closing in. Here comes Heidi Miner now with a head of steam. Miner has closed back in on Bridge and the leader Eli Jackson. Momentum once again dive bombing the 38, clearing the leader Case Bridge back up front at the Brickyard. And Bridge is hitting this lap. Now the battle behind him. Looks like we had a car sideways. Looks like the 24 was sideways through turn 4. Here comes the 70. Round the top. Can't make anything happen. And here comes Mills. Mills retakes 2nd. That, I'll tell you what, that 3 has some speed tonight. The Thunder Motorsports number 3. Braden Mills sure is quick. Thunder Motorsports second and third. For the first time all night, we have a battle for the lead with Heidi Miner. Miner wants the lead. Can she lead her first laps, I think, of her career? Thunder Motorsports has been good. Here comes the 70, down turn 3, contact made again. They're going to be side by side entering 4. In the 3, sideways. Out of 4, Heidi Miner will clear Eli Jackson, and we have a new leader. Heidi Miner leads her first lap tonight. Heidi Miner leads in Indianapolis. And remember, she is a rookie looking for her first career win. Can she do it tonight here in Indy? It's been a good race so far. Lap 124. You can look at the speed of the 70 compared to the 38 as Schreiner takes second away. It's the females 1 and 2. It's girl power tonight in Indy. Schreiner and Miner battling for position. Thunder Motorsports versus Schreiner Motorsports. There is a driver switch rumor for next season. We know that Schreiner and Stevenson will return, but the switch rumor is that Jonathan Stevenson might pilot the 45 next year, and Andre Schreiner might be back in the 74. Schreiner has so many wins in the 74. Contact made. Here comes Schreiner. And the 3 is into the wall. The 9 is involved as well. The 18 is there. The 9 just put the 3 into the wall. Isaac said, I think, had enough of Braden Mills. I don't know what was going on. Well, that's happening. Andre Schreiner has the lead here in Indianapolis. Evening races at its finest. Here comes a 70. Great run by the 70. To turn 3. Here comes Miner. But they make contact. They continue to make contact, and Mills is there. Now they're going to be side by side through turn 4. More contact. Green is coming, and he wants to slap back. Green wants his lap back, and he is there, trying to make it 3 wide, and he runs on the grass. How about Nick Green, top 5 run in Indy? Schreiner continues to be in front of the 70, but here comes Green. This is not good for the field. And now brother, sister, now fighting. Schreiner knows that Green is wanting his lap back. He goes low. They make contact. They continue to make contact. He just wrecked his sister. Schreiner is on her side. Nick Green just wrecked his sister for the lead. I mean, not for the lead, but for some room. Here comes a 74 and the 47. Well, chaos in Indy. Can't believe Nick Green just wrecked Andre Schreiner. Not for position. He tries to get his lap back. Jackson is there. Chaos in this one. And Green is now up to third. He's in second. Green to second. And he is on the lead lap. He was not going to be on the lead lap, I don't think, until he wrecked his sister. That's crazy that he did that. Audrey is trying to wrecked by her own brother. And here in Indianapolis, they call him the king of all racing. So many wins in this league, so many wins elsewhere. We know he is looking to make a NASCAR debut next season at IRP in the Truck Series. Nick Green to the lead once again at the Brickyard. Nick Green leads. The question is for next year in the Truck Series, if he races part-time, that might be an RMG racing car. That might be an RMG racing truck, number 51. Here comes the 51, Nick Green right there. Through turn 4. Continuing to lead at the Brickyard. He just wrecked Cole Fleck. Nick Green is a little demon. Nick Green knows that he is not racing full time and he wants to begin the championship hunt. He leads at the Brickyard. We will be back after the break. We have another battle between brother and sister once again. The last time these two drivers were battling, it was Green who put Schreiner in the wall and forced her to wreck. And the two is there trying to get payback as well on Green. Green also wrecked full flick earlier in the race. Green is in position right now. It is a position battle between the 45 and the 51. Here comes Green with a great run in the 51, looking to win this race. I know for a fact we are going to see some chaos at the end of this one. The high line works, and the two goes around. Full flick goes around. Looks like that Matthew Campton has stayed in this race. 21 cars remain. I am interested in seeing what caused that first wreck. Like in that first wreck. So I'll be going back to the replay after this race is over. Less than 100 laps to go. 85 remaining, I think. Yeah, it's 85 to go. No, 95 laps to go. I don't know what I'm saying. Here comes Point X around the top. Can't do anything. And Green around the bottom. And now he is going for the lead. Green on the bottom. Schreiner up top. They make contact in turn 3. And Poindexter goes into the wall. Turn 4, Schreiner slides just a bit. And Green is back up front at the Brickyard. But still a battle between brother and sister. Schreiner there on the inside. Green on the outside. It's a good run. Green keeps the lead. How about Isaac Stead in position to get a win here in Indianapolis? He could very well win this race. Green wiggles just a bit. I think he's coming to pit road this time. He has 3 laps left on his fuel. He goes low. Yes, he's pitting. The 45 is pitting as well. Landon Gilliott on the back straightaway. He will take the lead in the next couple laps. The 9 is not that close to the 65. But it's still close enough. Wait, no. The 45 didn't pit. I think she missed her pit box. I think she missed pit road or something. She stayed out, but the 51 didn't. It looked like that she was going to pit. Now this time, looks like that she will be pitting. She keeps it around the top. Schreiner continuing to lead in Indianapolis. She goes low, and she's going to pit. Schreiner pits, and here comes Gilliott. He's going to get around the 51. It's going to be interesting. Where will the 51 come out of pit road at? He's still on pit road. And there is the 9 now. I think entering the front straightaway here. There's the 51 and there's the 9. The 9 gets around the 51 as Green is now coming out on track. There's Flick as well. Flick, I think, is going to pass Green. Actually, I don't know. Green is still there. He might just stay in front of Flick. He might be in fourth. There's Flick around Green, and Green is going to stay in the top 5. Green stays in the top 5. Contact made between the 12 and 65. Here comes the 65 right there, side by side with the 12. And terrible pit cycle for the 45 as well. He's out behind the 3 and the 51, way behind the 51. The 29 loose behind the 65. As Stead closes back in, and he has a lot of fuel in his car. And Flick is pitting with heavy damage. Green up to 3rd. I mean, the race fans here know now, if he stays out of trouble on lap 181 now of 260, if he stays out of trouble, I'll tell you what, that 51 might be a threat at the end of this one. Here comes the 65 on the top of the 70. Here comes Miner there. She will get around the 65 of Landon Gilliott. Green and Stevenson battling. He almost wrecked Stevenson. It's still evening here in Indy. Here we go from Indianapolis, the 65 there. 8-second advantage over Isaac Stead, who is in second. 7 seconds back. Stead is closing. Schreiner has more fuel than the leaders as well. That might have helped her out quite a bit. As I think Miner's now back on the lead lap. th place right now for Matthew Campton. Early trouble in this one. As it's still the leader. The leader is still Gilliott, but now by 4 seconds. The gap is closing. How about Rodrigo Patino Romo? He was one of the cars to watch in this one, but right now he's not. Campton won last week. And here we go. 3-second lead. Entering turn 3 is the 9. 2-second lead. Gilliott needs to be worried. 2 former Plainfield High School basketball players battling for the win here at the Brickyard. Isaac Stead finally showing speed up front all day long, all evening long, and Green has been there as well. Do not count Thunder out. He is in 3rd. 11 seconds back, and the gap back to 2nd has closed. Less than a second, and it's closing even big time now. Car stuck on pit road. Looks like that he is out of the race, and that is the 11 20 cars running on the racetrack now. Only 20 cars remain in Indy. And we still have a long way to go in this one, although the laps are winding down. Green is closing in. 10-second advantage over Braden Mills is Green, but it's an 8-second advantage from Gillett back to Green in closing big time. And now the 9 has stolen out just a bit behind Gillett in front of the sold out crowd. It's still a very warm evening in Indianapolis, Indiana. Next week we are going to Watkins Glen, New York. We are going left and right on a normal road course at Watkins Glen International. And we have usually seen chaos there too. Here is the 9 right there, and the leaders need to be worried because the guy who has fresher tires than both of them is on the move. Here comes Green. You can see him in the background. The 18 is there. That's the lap car. That is going to slow the leader up. The 18 there. Green is closing in the 51. Can he win in Indy? Here comes the 9 now, trying to get back underneath the 18. The lap car, Bryce Pex. It was just a 1-second advantage, and now it's back underneath a 1-second advantage. It's a 1-second advantage for the leaders. Back to Green. Green has caught the top 2. He sees him. He sees Stead. Contact made between the 18 and 65. The 9 gets around the 18. The 51 is going to get around the 33. Pax uses the top. And now is going to try to push the 9, but can't, as Green gets him. Here comes Thunder. Green is on the move. Gillett instead knows that he is there. Green through turn 4. He's on the tail end of the 9. 3-car battle for the lead. Instead, he wants the lead. He wants to close back in, and he is. But one slip up bring the 51 in, and momentum will bring Nick Green in. Looks like that Green has stalled out just a bit. And now he's using the bottom. The 9 is as well. But the 51 is there. The 51 is getting a great run on the 9. And go bottom of 3, now bottom of 4. Stead continues to run in second until coming to lap 190. Green is closing. Here comes Stead. Round the bottom, it's side by side for the lead. Stead couldn't get the lead, and the 18 gets bumped out of the way by Green. Schreiner and Mills are now closing the gap. They're battling for that 4th spot. And the battle up front remains And now here comes Green. One spot away from retaking the lead. "70 laps of racing left at the Brickyard. 70 to go in Indianapolis. 3 wide. Almost 3 wide on turn 1. Green loses second. And that gap is growing from the leader back to second. But now here comes Stead. Stead now getting a great run, 3/10 back. Green has to watch as Stead is there. They make contact. They make contact. Pax puts Green into the wall. Nick Green gets put into the wall. In the 65 gets cleared by the 9. Bryce Pax just put Nick Green in the wall. I think he had enough with the 18. With the 51. Now the 65 on the inside, looking for the lead. He's still there. Turn 2. Gillett there. He slides out of 2. Here comes the 18 and 51. Stead pulling away. And now the thing that the 65 did not want to see is that 51. He might get back underneath the 18. He does. He clears the 18, and Green is back down, tracking down Landon Gillett. And he has really quickly. Here comes the 51. Green is there, but look at Pax down on the inside. Passing Green once again, that will help Gillett. Pax clears Green. As we see Mills in the background as well. Braden Mills is in the background, same as Andre Schreiner. That 45 is there. Now the leaders have their work cut out for them. Here comes Green, back to the inside of the 65. Can't make a move, can't make a run happen. 42 and 18 collide. Here comes the 3. Heavy damage to the 3. As the 65 pits. And now, Green is in second. Green there, contact made with the 18. Green has caught the 9. Outside, to the inside. He gets loose. Green gets loose. As Stead continues to lead here in Indy. It looks like that RMG Racing gave Nick Green a great car here tonight. Mills, he's coming down pit road. Now they're starting to make even more pit stops. Green is there. Schreiner is in third. Heidi Meyer is in fourth. Still 6 seconds back. Here comes the 51, trying to close back in on Stead. He uses the high side, looking for a great run, and is getting a good run. Nick Green has been good here tonight. Not great, but good. He started terribly. Nick Green started deep in the field, and now he has found himself up front. While Isaac Stead, I think he was a pole sitter. I have to go back to the start of the race. I think Isaac Stead started on the pole. We have a long way to go still. 65 laps to go. Yes, indeed. How about the 9 from the pole continuing to lead at the Brickyard? Nick Green started 29th. Schreiner and Green battling. Schreiner is not going to put Green into the wall, but how about Green being patient there with his sister? And right now it's Isaac Stead who leads in Indy. Now the 18 to the inside of the 9. That's going to bring in the 45 and 51. And now it's going to be a battle for the lead. Here comes Schreiner and Green. This is about to be a great end to this race indeed. Green there is still in front of the 2. The 45 is there. Schreiner looks slow, sends it deep on the 9. Can't make a pass happen. In the 2, just put the 51 in the wall. Green just got put into the wall again. This time by Cole Flick. And now here comes Schreiner. She wants the lead over Isaac Stead. It's side by side. Schreiner back up front in Indy. It's a great race in Indianapolis. Schreiner there. Stead there. Great battling up front. The 2 now gets contact. Here comes the 51 to the inside. And the 51 almost just sent the 9 around. That was almost terrible as Stead is coming down pit road. Schreiner versus Green on lap 199. Next time by, it's lap 200. But Schreiner has a 1 second lead over her younger brother. Nick Green now clears the 2, getting a great run back on the 45. Look at the 51 there, clearing the 2. Let's watch them both. Are they pitting this time? No, they're not. They say out. 61 laps to go here in Indy. Here comes Green around the top. Great run by Green. He goes slow. Contact made. And now he's falling back just a bit. Now he goes back down to the inside. Green back down to the inside for a run. And is he going to get a run? Yes, he is. Green gets a run, but same as Flick. Flick there. Green there as well. Flick now looking to get one of his laps back. As he is about to get around the 45, but no, he's not going to. Here comes Green back down on the inside. Green gets back around the 2, but the 2 around the outside. We have 60 laps to go. 200 laps down, 60 to go. The laps are winding down, and everybody knows that. Here comes Green with a great run on the 2. Heavy contact between them both. And the 51 and 2 keeping it on the wall themselves. And the 51 clears the 2. As the 51 trying to close back in on his sister. For one final time, for the break, we will be back. We are running along with the 9. We know now the laps are winding down. 31 to go when they cross the line. Stead and Gilliott. Contact made. 31 laps to go. The laps have wind down. And now Nick Green sits in fourth, 4 seconds back. I think everybody still has to pit. Yeah, everybody will have to make at least one more pit stop, I think. Instead, they're in second. Who's going to win at the Brickyard? Here comes Stead. Around the top. Can't do anything. He slides. Guys, how about Heidi Miner back inside the top 3? Out of 4. 30 laps remaining in Indianapolis. $30 laps to go in Indy. The 70 just scraped the wall. The 3 is there. The 45 is there. About Green there in 4th. Yeah, everybody will have to make a pit stop. That's not a lie. Through turn 3. Looks like it's a battle for second. No battle for second. Instead is closing in on the leader. Heidi Miner hits the wall hard. Here comes Green. He wants 3rd. 77 almost just hit the inside wall. How that is possible, I don't know. And Green runs through the grass. We have a battle back up front with 29 laps to go. Stead and Gilliott. Both of them are battling. Stead, 29 laps up front his field. Yeah, everybody will make one more pit stop. These are the drivers battling for the win here at the Brickyard. The laps have winded down. The sun is completely set. Barely any light left under the lights at the Brickyard. Here comes Isaac Stead. He is using the top and he is getting a great run out of 1. Through turn 2, he uses clean air. He has clean air. Down the back straightaway, it's going to be side by side for the lead. Stead, bottom. Top is Gilliott. Side by side up front. They make contact, the 65 in the wall. If the 65 spins, that might be the end of his. That will be the end of his chance to win this race. Isaac Stead in the best position right now to maybe get to victory lane. Isaac Stead looking for career win number 1 here in the Crazy Sportsman League. Landon Gilliott is there. I think Gilliott has already won. Yeah, Gilliott's already won a race in his career. Here comes Gilliott, and look at Miner right behind them. Green there as well. Side by side for the lead. Gilliott instead, side by side. Instead, sideways. Here comes Miner and Green. Heidi Miner now, she wants the second spot on lap 2:35. Next time by, it's going to be 25 laps to go. They are about a lap short. Here we go. Here comes the 9. Down the back straightaway. Taking the lead back away just barely. Still side by side. The 9 there. clears the 65, clears him. The 65 scrapes the wall. They all might try to fit together too. That might be the real strategy that they have, hitting together. And I feel like someone's gonna stay out and try to win this as well. It's only the top 6 that are in contention to win this race. Everyone else has no shot of winning. Here comes Gillian. Gillian instead battling for position there. Green clears for 3rd. Now comes a 24 laps to go. Minor there battling for 3rd with Green. 24 to go. Down turn 1. Here comes Gillett. Trying to get some clean air. He slides. And he can't do anything. Here comes Heidi Minor with a great run. She clears Green. But now, here comes the momentum by the 65 and the drive. It's going to be a battle up front. Gillian there. Stead outside. Gillian inside. Stead were clear from the outside. The outside lane works. How did it work for him there? I don't know. 23 laps to go in Indy. They have to make one more pit stop. And then they can race until it's the end of times. One more pit stop is on the horizon for all these drivers. Here we go, Minor to 2nd. I think it's also going to be a race of who wins the race off the pit road. I think whoever gets in front of each other is going to win the race. Who's going to leapfrog them? Gillian now comes to pit road. He wants to leapfrog everybody. Minor, I think, just led that lap. Side by side for the lead. Side by side with Stead, but Stead holds strong on the outside. And now, Gillian making his final pit stop. Will everybody else pit? I think Schreiner will pit later. That's a good question. It's side by side again for the lead. Minor inside. Clearing the 9 for the lead. The 9 inside, not pitting, neither is the 51. This is going to put the 65 lap down. And none of the other front runners pit. This might be a huge advantage for Landon Gillian. He finally gets off pit road, who knows? All we know, it is 21 laps to go. Stead is there. Stead inside of Minor. They make contact. And Stead will clear Heidi. Here comes Green once again. Minor there. She uses the inside. They're still not pitting. Let's watch the 45 and the 3. They're not pitting either. They're staying out. As 65, he's going to have to pit again as well. I think the 65 pitted for tires. These drivers will have to pit for fuel. This might be an advantage for these drivers instead. Isaac Stead, Heidi Minor, Nick Green 1, 2, 3, Minor to the inside. Minor will clear Stead. Looks like that Stead is coming down pit road. I think Stead might try to pit here. Yeah, wait. Hang on a second. Now, that was the end of the race. Isaac Stead has won the Brickyard 600. Not 260 laps, 240. Isaac Stead has won the Brickyard 400. That was my bad. I didn't realize that they were racing to 240. Yeah, Isaac Stead wins over Heidi Miner and Nick Green. That was a good race. Yeah, that was a good race. Isaac Stead wins the Brickyard 600.